Hey folks, it's Sam. I'm here talking about December 2020 forecast. We have opportunities and obstacles and things ahead for you. I want to also let you know that I have this upcoming web class, or actually it's a web class that you can attend now, where I'm talking about Jupiter and Capricorn, where it is now. You can register for that. It's free, and it's an hour of me talking about this. You can either watch an instant replay, again, right after this is done or whatever. When you sign up for it, though, it actually will send you a link so you can watch it at your leisure, or you can show up in real time and schedule it. So it's a great way for you to learn about Jupiter in Capricorn. It's in its debilitated sign. I'm going to be talking about that as part of this forecast. But for you in all 12 signs, again, very important. Like if you're a Taurus, it's going to be in your 9th house. If you're a Cancer, it's your 7th house. Now, again, this is going on for the next several months. We're also going to look at it historically, like where it just was. It actually popped its head in there earlier in 2020, right when we had COVID. So I talk about that in pretty great detail. Also, the different nakshatras as Jupiter goes into Uttar Ashada, then Shravana, then Dhanishta. I talk about the nakshatras. Then some remedies and practices for this time. Again, it's free. You just go there, click that link, and rock and roll with that. But today I'm mainly talking about the December 2020. And as you can see, well, let me bring up this. This is today, change time toolbar. We're spontaneous, folks. We do it in real time. Let me see. Go forward here. Okay, so we're going to start with we're going to go through each day by day, and look at what we can expect in general for December of 2020. And, it's very, we're in a very transformative time. But in many ways, it's a time of real hope and possibility, and I would say, turning a corner around a real difficult and confusing last couple of years. And I talked about this time of more like stability and, I guess, restoration of sanity on some level, where things calm down a little bit. With Rahu going into Taurus, again, I also did a web class on that you can watch. And so this is a kind of continuation of that theme, where, again, we have some intense things ahead. But in general, we can see that we have Rahu in Taurus, Ketu in Scorpio, where they're quite powerful. Rahu stabilizes the craziness Taurus stabilizes the kind of volatility and uncertainty and potential sort of craziness of the node, makes it much more solid, much more grounded. We also have Saturn in Capricorn, which is also very, concentrated and, buttoned down and willing to look at problems and face hardships and difficulties head on, and also kind of shifting the paradigm. Jupiter is also there, and he'll be there for December as well, which is, this is a debilitated sign, but Jupiter is debilitated, but it's with its ruler. So that's one of the most powerful Neecha Bhanga factors that we have, means where the debilitation is modified. And then we also have Mars will be up here in Pisces for most of the month. It goes into Aries around the end of the month. But again, for the most part, we're looking at this Mars in Pisces, which again is still kind of like the spiritual warrior sort of energy. And it's moving direct. It was retrograde. So all the planets are direct. There are no retrograde planets now. And Venus moves from Libra into Scorpio, and then the Sun and Mercury wind up moving into Sagittarius. But I'm mainly going to be doing a sort of day-to-day overview of December. And again, I've already done an update on the lunar eclipse. This is a day pretty much after the lunar eclipse. Lunar eclipse happens on the 30th of November. If we go back a day, we have the lunar eclipse on this day. on the 30th. I already did an update on the lunar eclipse. This is the day after, and we see that the moon is still in Taurus. And so we start the month with the moon in Taurus. It's just been eclipsed. And, this is a time when, again, we're sort of in some ways like obsessed with, with stabilizing energy, bringing about stability and structure. And so, again, it's a sort of confusing quality to it, but it's really compelling and beneficial in bringing about our, especially if you have any kind of spiritual practice, it's very empowering at this time, because eclipses are always times when we're trying to extend and exacerbate our, certain area. And with the moon being eclipsed, it's about expanding those feelings and those emotions into something much more devotional, much more eternal, much more stable. Again, because it's both Rahu is exalted here and the moon is also in the exaltation sign. So we're starting off December again with a lot of, potential for devotion, connection, peace. Even though the node is there and we just had an eclipse, it's all about your capacity to be introspective. If you're getting all of your identity and your sense of peace from the external world right now, it can be pretty difficult, right? Because the things are volatile and still certainly polarized in one way or another. They're going to get more stable. They're going to be stabilizing more and more. And I think a lot of the country in the world is starting to kind of exhale, sort of collective exhaling as we get closer to this lunar eclipse. That sense of gratitude and devotion to something beyond just the world can be really palpable as we get near that eclipse and afterward. So we start December on that note, and so you should notice that. Then on December 2nd and 3rd and into the 4th, let me set this hours a little better here. Put it around the middle of the day. Oops. Go back. Okay. Then, so on the 2nd and 3rd, primarily, we have the moon in Gemini. Now, moon in Gemini is about, it's about things like, curiosity, trying new things, experimentation, not just being stuck in the same old way of doing things and our same old beliefs. Again, it's really a time for us to be, being open and hopefully considering new ways of seeing the world, new ways of communicating with each other, tolerating each other in your personal life. Again, this is also, Gemini is about speech, communication with the people around you. Again, a sense of enjoyment and curiosity. Good time to be like exploring your interests, trying new things. Even doing things like writing and self-expression on December 2nd and December 3rd, those things will be important. Now, Mars is also aspecting, so there could be some intense emotions here with Mars aspecting. So we could expect some, again, a bit of restlessness and volatility, maybe contentiousness. So be careful about being confrontational and arguing and fighting on December 2nd and 3rd. But in general, it's a time for, consensus, trying new things, a sense of fun and enjoyment and happiness. Then on December 4th and 5th, the moon goes into Cancer. Now, the moon is the ruler of Cancer, so it extends and expands upon that emotional and potentially devotional quality of the moon. But, Cancer also, again, makes the emotions a little bit bigger, so we can be more emotionally sensitive, perhaps more, sometimes it makes a bigger wave. So sometimes if that big wave is something negative or difficult, it can dramatize it more. So be aware of that. But again, it also makes for a deeper devotional possibility on those days. But again, especially on December 4th, there's going to be some pretty direct aspects from both Saturn and Jupiter. They're really close together, this Saturn, Jupiter. And so on December 4th, there could be some worrying, some worries and imagined fears and tangible fears as we get through some important dates with some cultural transitions that are happening, like with elections and other kinds of things that are going on. There's pressure still behind the scenes, or some people are taking that and getting worried by that sort of stuff. We'll see on the 4th, especially, there could be some stress and worry as both Saturn and Jupiter are aspecting the moon. On the 5th, it starts to wane more, and but we could still be feeling a sort of emotional, those could be some emotional days, December 4th and 5th. But again, as always, not to sound like a broken record, but especially the moon in Cancer, there's a lot of possibility for deeper devotional practices. Again, that's like meditation and being surrounded by loved ones, people where you literally feel safe, feel like you want to, nurture them or be nurtured by them, where there's not contentiousness. By the way, that includes things like pets and animals. These are good days for taking care of pets and animals and being with them. They're always a real healing balm to our preoccupations with the world. They're very grounding and healing. So then we have on December 6th and 7th, we have the moon in Leo. And this moon in Leo are a couple days on the 6th and 7th of a kind of fiery, passionate individuality, and individualism, where, we feel psychologically and emotionally ready for big things. Again, that could be our big ideas, our identity, our persona, our goals. It might be something where we're not as much into the compromise with other people and whatnot. That's part of it. But again, we also should see and realize that it's that we're that it's a good time to really identify what inspires us and be very clear about it. And again, on a spiritual level, because I like to bring these things out as well, on a spiritual level, it's definitely something where we the moon in Leo, Leo is that sign of the Atman, of the sun, of the true self, that one without a second. Every day, when I talk about these energies, there's a mundane quality because we're very attached to the world and we live in the world. There's that worldly quality, but there's also the otherworldly quality that's not that if you do spiritual practices and you're trying to really awaken the self, these are also not just possibilities, but they're at the forefront. So again, Leo is very much about the king and the self and the soul within, and that's really important. So again, on the 6th and 7th, that spiritual promise is very very important and very present. Then on the 8th and 9th and into the 10th, the moon goes through Virgo. Now Virgo is much more orderly, much more like sort of perfectionistic. It's where we want to organize things, put things in the right place, in the right perspective, where we try to manage and organize our external life and our internal life. So these days on the 8th, 9th, and 10th, or 8th, 9th, and halfway into the 10th, is really a time to be more practical. Like if we just came from that fiery quality of Leo, to be inspired and to purify and to really connect with the power within and, maybe feel that sort of burning, fiery purpose. In Virgo, it's much more, okay, now how do I take that fire and organize it and arrange my environment, my diet, my world in the most orderly way, the most practical way, so that I don't waste all of that energy. I don't waste all of that power in just random actions. So again, in addition, you'll feel the need to like clean things and perfect things on those days, on the 8th and the 9th and into the 10th. Then halfway into the 10th, the 11th, and then halfway into the 12th. So again, you see the moon is kind of moving back and forth. It's not always full days. And again, this is also for my place in California. If you're in Europe or in Asia or something, these are like 12 hours earlier, your Gregorian calendar days. But we'll say on the 10th, 11th, and into the 12th, the moon is in Libra. And it's a time when we will want to connect with other people. So again, Libra comes after Virgo. Instead of just, we organize things in the best way and we want things to be proper and correct in Virgo. And then in Libra, we want to share them, because if I'm just sitting here with my neat little apartment, which, by the way, if I turn the camera this way, you'd see it's not. But let's say, for example, it was. I had a neat little condo here. This, by the way, this section right here behind me is like the neatest part of my whole life. I say, okay, I'll sit here, I'll have this, and then I won't show what's on these sides of me. So let's say, for example, it was nice and neat and orderly. I'd want to share it with someone. I'd want to invite someone over who I love and who I want to spend time with, and have them share my nice, neat little orderly world with them. And that's the nature of Libra. Libra is about sharing things, sharing beauty, sharing what you love with someone, because we love nothing more than seeing people enjoy the thing that we enjoy. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to find people that enjoy the things we enjoy, that appreciate what we appreciate, and sharing that with them. And so nothing makes life in the body more worth living, right? And so we'll be feeling quite a bit of that on December 10th and 11th. And then on the 12th, 13th, and into the 14th, we have the moon in Scorpio. Now we're also now getting on these eclipse days, because we're going to have a solar eclipse. I did a whole thing on the solar eclipse. I'm going to do another one on the solar eclipse that more revolves around mundane issues, things in the world, like with society and culture and whatnot, and the world. I'll do that soon, but we have this on December 12th, 13th, into the 14th. The moon is in Scorpio, and it's joined Venus, Mercury, the Sun, the Moon, Ketu. So again, this moon is debilitated, and it's debilitated sign, and it's where we feel stressed and restless emotionally, and where we want to find some way to manage and organize and control our environment and our life, mainly emotions and psychology. So you see Scorpio is sort of coming after Libra. Libra, we want to bring someone into our life and share things with us. And Scorpio, we realize how vulnerable we are once we do that. How when we develop feelings, there's a lot of emotions. We can't control them. We can't control the other person. And we're afraid. And we, again, we feel disrespected. So we can get into emotional battles. Again, Scorpio is water and ruled by Mars. So right there you see like emotional battle, emotional courage as well. So again, some planets do really well there, especially Mars and the Sun and Jupiter really help to elevate and bring a lot of healing there. The moon, not necessarily, because the moon is where we just have these feelings. Venus also doesn't feel so good in Scorpio because, again, Venus wants things to be easy and light and stable, and where we're mainly respectful of other people first. Again, that's very beneficial. And it's the part of us that feels like that's beneficial is the Venus part. Because when we disrespect others, we feel bad. Again, that's the Venus part of us feeling bad. So again, when Venus goes into Scorpio, we might tend to be the first one to be disrespectful. And then later realize, oh yeah, that was me because I felt vulnerable and felt unappreciated. I attacked you a little bit, or I emotionally, Scorpio is also not direct. Mars is more direct attack. Scorpio is more like, it can be very sort of manipulative energy, like sort of passive aggressive, or do this thing that indirectly hurts you kind of. And again, when we do that kind of stuff, part of us winds up feeling bad, and it's the moon part of us that feels bad. It's the Venus part of us that feels bad. It's the Mercury part of us that feels bad when we do that. So these planets are often not so, they don't feel so good in that sign. And we have quite a few of them here. Venus, Moon, Mercury. The Sun is powerful in Scorpio, but it's got these other planets here. So this could be an emotionally difficult eclipse in transit for sure. Again, I did a whole video on that about what's really possible here, and what the difficulties and struggles are with Scorpio, which you should watch. But again, we want to know and be aware of that on these days of the month. Again, that would be the halfway through the 12th. Again, if you're in another part of the world, if you're in Europe or Asia, it's probably around the end of the day of the 12th and more the 13th, because your calendar is ahead of mine. But I'm doing this for like the US and even like the West Coast of the US. So the 12th, 13th, and into the 14th, halfway into the 14th. So those things will be obvious, right? And so again, the real benefit here again is to cultivate deeper devotion. And again, when all that energy is flying around like that, we don't have much choice but to try to harness it in an empowering way. That's our challenge. Let me take a quick drink here. And what we should be doing all the time, not just during this time, but when people's lives revolve around their spiritual practices and they're doing these things all the time, like they're always doing their pranayama and their mantras and their breath and maybe some yoga or whatever it is, that's an authentic practice. When these things happen, you know what happens? The spiritual practice gets 10 times deeper. Why? Because there's all this energy. And if you're living in accordance with the energy, it pulls you into that depth. So these eclipses and these moments that feel so terrible to those of us who never do spiritual practice, to the yogi, it's like the best day of the year. Like, woohoo, yay, all of this energy is concentrated around this thing. Because you also have Ketu there in Scorpio, which is really strong, trying to suck us and pull us down into the depths. So what happens is we wind up not doing any spiritual practice, and then these moments come, and then we're like, well, what should I do? Well, you should do spiritual practice. Well, it's so hard to concentrate when that happens. Yes, because you're not doing it any other time. It's literally like any other thing. Like saying, it's like if the solution to a problem was, okay, you need to bench press 200 pounds. If you could just bench press 200 pounds, then you won't die. And someone says, okay. But if you find that out the day before and you can't bench press 200 pounds, then you're going to die. It's like, well, if you would have told me this 6 months ago, I could have maybe trained so that now I can bench press 200 pounds. Well, again, that's not just what astrology is, but life is like that. Life is like that, where you should be doing it, lifting a little bit every day so that you're strong. So then when the time comes when it's going to be, instead of 125 pounds that you've been using to build up. Now you got to do 200 pounds. You can lift it. And in lifting it, you get bigger muscles. It gets stronger. You get even stronger because now you're working with more weight. And with more weight, there's more potential. Just like the example that I used about surfing and all of that, right? If you're on these little waves, if you practice on these little waves, then when the big wave comes, you have some practice. But if you never surf and you never practice and you never try, you don't do any practice, and then a big wave comes, it's just going to drown you. And you're just going to wait for it to crash over your head and slam your head on the bottom, and then you got to come up and go, oh, what was that? Well, that's because you're not practicing. That's why we got to be surfing every day. And again, so every day has a little bit of a different wave. Sometimes the waves are a little bigger, like when planets join difficulties, join difficult planets. Like over here, we're going to have, we'll have another sort of wave after this eclipse. Then Saturn, then the moon joins Saturn and Jupiter. Okay, so that's another wave, right? It's like, okay, that's a pretty tricky wave. But if we're always meditating and doing practices within these waves, then when a big one comes, now it's like, okay, now I'm going to jump on this big wave. And that big wave has more of a potential to slam your head on the bottom and turn you upside down. But it also has the potential to take you really far. But only if you're a surfer. If you're not a surfer, watch out. So you want to surf the waves. Surf the waves of karma. You got to get in there and get your feet wet, get wet, and jump in, right? Pretty good metaphor, wasn't it? Okay. So again, and it's good, especially when we're looking at the moon, because again, I'm talking about the moon, and I always talk about the moon here with these daily, in this daily rundown, because the moon is literally like your feelings and your emotions. We're so just driven by how we feel that day and whatnot. These are all just little waves. And your spiritual practices is what takes you through all of that and allows all of it to be some variation on a theme. Oh, this was okay. Oh, this was actually a pleasant wave. Oh, good wave today. Oh, this is a scary one for these couple days. Okay. So now we have on the 14th, 15th, and into the 16th, we have the moon is in Sagittarius. And again, after the Scorpio, usually the Sagittarius feels a bit like a relief and a kind of, like we're then reconnecting to something that feels more inspiring, because Scorpio can challenge us to look for a deeper answer. And if we don't have it and we're just full of triggers and fears, then Scorpio is intense. When we do have a good answer, those fears and whatnot become very deep, becomes a very deep gratitude for our teachers and our teachings and that devotion. Either way, here on the 14th, 15th, and 16th, moon in Sagittarius on those days should feel, again, pretty elevated and inspiring and hopeful, connected to your teachers and teachings. Now on the 16th, around the middle of the day, you see the moon goes into Capricorn, where it joins this Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, right? And we're going to have this I think it's an occultation of Saturn and Jupiter, where they're within 1 degree of each other. Maybe it's not an occultation, but they're literally not only they're not only within this sort of planetary war, like right on top of each other in ecliptic longitude, but also in latitude. I think they line up and their magnitude blurs and joins as one big light spot on these days. But so on the, halfway through the 16th, and then on the 17th and 18th, the moon is in Capricorn and it's joined Saturn and Jupiter. So again, this will be a pretty bumpy wave, maybe not, bad, but pretty intense, because again, we have Jupiter there, where we might be feeling a lack of hope a little bit to some extent, because again, Jupiter is in a debilitated sign in Capricorn, where things get very serious. But Saturn is also there, which means once we get really serious, the planet of seriousness, Saturn, is there to really help focus and help us concentrate on something that is more universal and eternal and beneficial than just spinning out on fear and worry and stress. So those couple days, though, we could really feel it. And again, when you have practices and you have capacity and capability and practice in those kinds of things, this doesn't feel so bad at all. You know, I got to tell you, man, it's really the truth that Saturn energy is so profound and so deep and so transcendent like nothing else, because it literally is the energy of silence and stillness and peace, where the mind and everything stops and slows down, and there's freedom in that. And you don't taste it or touch it until you deal with Saturn. It's Saturn energy that slows everything down and makes it really simple. And again, there's so much opportunity with Saturn going through Capricorn now, and then Aquarius. But you can't just spin out on the negative quality of, oh, now Jupiter's with Saturn, now what? And people are so triggered and totally miss the point here of the greatness that can emerge when we just slow down, sit down, be quiet, and tune into this energy. And that's what it's trying to get you to do. It's trying to get you to do that. Look at what happened last year when we had Saturn go into Capricorn and then Mars join it and then Jupiter join it. What happened? The entire world shut down and said, okay, go home, shut up and be quiet. Just go home and be quiet. Hopefully be quiet on some level. At least you have the opportunity to go home and be quiet. And what did people do? People just kind of went bonkers. At first, for a while, we felt it was pretty cool to see how nature started to replenish itself and whatnot. But then we got restless again. But how many people really use that time or could use that time now? Again, the world is looking at another kind of, lockdown, go home kind of thing right now. And again, everybody's just out there yelling about, oh, my freedom and all. Look, nobody wants to be locked down. Nobody wants any of this. Everybody wants to have to go and do whatever we want and get on planes and go out in nightclubs and dance and be around each other and all. Nobody wants it. But to say that there's not an opportunity is just totally missing the point. So again, even just now, the wasted opportunity of Saturn and Capricorn, just in general, is sad. And so again, you should understand this, that the richness of having Saturn there. And again, part of why we can't be still is because we're triggered, because we're attached to all this stuff external and our fears, and they're controlling me, and it's all the big plan, and we're just all freaked out. Doesn't mean we don't pay attention to the world or whatever, but every moment and every breath really, in many ways, belongs to Saturn and that stillness of the moment. So try to bring your energy into the moment in general, but on these days here where it could be, where you could be stressed out and freaked out and worried because the moon will be close to Jupiter, Saturn, and Capricorn. And then just in general with your idea that Jupiter and Saturn, Jupiter's debilitated. Oh, now what? Again, there's some worries and stresses around money and other things that I know a lot of people are experiencing, and globally is definitely out there, of course. But we really debilitate ourselves by the worry and by the projection and the worrying projection, which is, again, one of the problems here. Moment to moment, you still have the moment. So dial in and tune into the breath and the moment and that stillness during these days. 16th, 17th, and 18th. Then on the 19th, 20th, we have the moon in, and into the 21st, we have the moon in Aquarius, the other sign ruled by Saturn. Now, again, this is much more about social causes, social justice, showing up for each other in a more in a more universal way, so that we're not just about our own personal power, our own personal glory, and our own personal victories, but we see things in a more universal way. Again, we got to come together around certain things. And we're going to start to see a lot of the craziness die down, especially as we get into next year and whatnot. But again, starting to come together around a lot of the things that seem like they divide us. But again, we all want the same things. And you know, we're so polarized. And so this time with Moon going through Aquarius is really a chance for you to also see beyond your need to lead the pack and tell everybody what is the way that everything should be. You have things to learn as well, and we're all part of the same culture. Finding those points of agreement, because we definitely have found a way to micro split hairs around every little point that we could disagree about. It's so strange now. I see where, you know, someone will agree with 90% of what I say, let's say 95%, almost probably all of it, probably more than what they think. But people will seize on one thing that I might have said and use that as 100% of their entire interaction with me. And I mean, this is something that we're doing now. Like, we don't see consensus anymore. Everything is so polarized, even just a relentless search for the, aha, you said something that I don't agree with. And that's it. You're now just like every other, and just completely seize upon that thing. We stop seeing the good in each other, and we just look for the flaw that we can use to then categorize people as separate from us. This is very dangerous. So again, the moon in Aquarius, these are some complicated energies up here. You know, the moon in Aquarius is like opposite Leo, where, you know, when I was talking about Leo, I was talking about the individual bringing out his light. Well, Aquarius is how the individual, all us individuals, interact with each other and hopefully find consensus within whatever groups we're in, whether they're politically or you know, within a country, or just as human beings and animals. We're all citizens of the earth. We're all in a collective relationship with each other. We're all breathing the same air. We're all under the same sky. Why don't we come together around those things, right? So, real opportunity to find things that are non-controversial, that you agree with and believe in, and try to form alliances. This is going to be very important in a couple of years, when Saturn goes into Aquarius in 2023. Right? So I'm very hopeful about the future. Right now, we're really scraping through a new paradigm, but then we will come together in ways that'll be surprising to us all. Okay, so then on the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd, you know, the middle of the 21st, then 22nd, 23rd, we got Moon in Pisces. Now it's joined Mars, particularly around the 23rd. And, you know, Pisces is the sign that's beyond that universal social contract we have with each other. It's about the transcendent metaphysical, right? So those are days that are also, you know, really good for surrender, dissolving the ego, letting go in your individual life, for sure. It definitely supports like the meditation and the surrender and the letting go part, but also creativity. It's a kind of a romantic sign as well, where we feel that unity consciousness, excuse me, is a big part of Pisces. And, excuse me, that unity consciousness is, again, it's transcendent beyond just our individuality or even our universal connection. Pisces is even beyond that. And so on the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, we can feel that metaphysical connection. And it joins Mars, especially on the 23rd. It gets really close to Mars. When you look up in the sky, you'll see Mars up there. And it's good for having the courage to, again, fight the good fight, especially as the spiritual warrior, and, really being empowered to face your own spiritual dilemma. Because, again, we want to project outward. Then we have this shift. Boom, look at that. Both Mars and the moon move into Aries on the 24th. So that's going to be an intense shift right before our Christmas here in the US and in other parts of the world. So Moon Mars, and Mars moving into Aries and the moon moving into Aries as well on the 24th and 25th. Obviously, that's quite a fired up energy here. So Christmas, pretty intense. Last year we had an eclipse on Christmas, right? Now we have Moon Mars conjunction, and they both go into Aries. So again, this really shows a lot of courage to express yourself. It could also mean quite a bit of, there's potential for struggling, fighting, arguing, and even like explosive potential, where frustrations, have been built up. And in this case, it's since Mars had been in Aries in October, around the middle of October, I think. I don't remember exact date. I'm not going to look it up, but it was in October. And so some frustrations maybe that had built up since Mars went back into Pisces. You could feel some of that stuff. Again, this definitely has some ramifications for social frustrations, for sure, because we have these frustrations and these polarizations going on in U.S. culture for sure, around elections and stuff. So we might see some weird events, especially socially coming up. It's not going to change any outcomes, I don't think. I'm almost certain it won't. But again, we could see some impassioned and fiery uprisings or reprisals or just rhetoric at this time around the holidays. But again, for you personally, this is also a time to watch your emotions and not get so triggered by people or family or in general. Again, Moon in Aries, and especially with Mars, gives a lot of potential for discipline, doing what we know is right, being the warrior, but not the murderer or the killer. And then on the 26th, 27th, and much of the 28th, we have the moon in Taurus, where it's exalted. So I think we'll get, there might be a couple days of that, but I think moon in Taurus, again, it's going to hit Rahu, but it's also, opposite Venus and whatnot. And so here on the 26th, 27th, 28th, moon in Taurus is going to be more stabilized, more, again, connected, grounded, and restoring some stability, some sanity, revealing the deeper truth, which this transit of the moon through Taurus has done. That has recalibrated us the last several times it's gone through this place. And so I expect the same kind of thing here, where we might see some frustration the previous 2 days, but the moon is going to be exalted here. And again, moon is exalted in Taurus because it brings that structure, that stability, and it kind of stabilizes the waves. Like I was talking about waves before. Again, Taurus is literally like fixed earth, where the earth is like still. It's kind of like a lake, right? Like a lake is still. There's no current in a lake, for example. Maybe from where a river leads into it, but if it's like a freshwater lake where water just comes into it from above, the only thing that creates waves is like air on the surface. The other times there's no real waves. Maybe if there's some fish in there swimming around, they create some ripples, but a lake is much more stable, right? And Taurus is kind of like a lake where it's already stable. right? Cancer is like the ocean, right? That's like the ocean. That's what Cancer, the water sign. It's kind of like the ocean, like the source where it's a lot of emotion going on. Pisces, this is a thing I came up with several years ago. Pisces is like a river, the water sign. Pisces is like a river, flowing and going in different directions. Taurus is like a lake, and Cancer is like the ocean. It's a nice little mnemonic. So we can see that kind of stability here for these couple days on the 26, 27, 28. And then 29, 30, we have the moon in Gemini again. And again, Gemini is about curiosity, flexibility, enjoyment. Again, even things like entertainment, having fun, and so it's also good if you're, to work through things, to communicate and whatnot. So those days, the 29th and 30th, is good to even start some projects or things that are fun and creative. I always seem, when the moon goes through Gemini, I always seem to want to play music and stuff. But I have Venus there and Mercury there too. So, but I always seem to want to, do something like that. So it always hits me in a sort of creative way. So you want to find something that you enjoy, right? And the people that you enjoy doing it with. And then the last day of the month, December 31st, we got the moon in big old Cancer, again, like the ocean. And it can be like big emotions, big, that sort of big energy, big shifts of emotion. And again, bringing in the new year with the moon in Cancer and also January 1st, 2021 would be in Cancer. So again, very devotional, but it's devotional in that you're harnessing the power of the ocean, right? That's why it can be big waves with Cancer, right? Because the ocean generates big waves, but also big potential. That's where all the big fish swim, the whales and the barracudas and even the little animals, right? So the ocean is like the source of it all. And so on December 31st, it's a time for connecting with that deeper devotional space, as well as you bring in the new year. And of course, how you begin something is often quite important. So how you begin the new year has a lot to do with the way it plays out in some sense. So, we have a lot of big potentials, big, potential challenges and opportunities now with, Jupiter having gone into Capricorn, where it's going to be for the next few months. Saturn is there with it. Again, this is a big part of what's ruling our life right now, where it's not so much the hope and inspiration. Now it's the work, as I've explained this many times. Again, Jupiter has to do the work in Capricorn. It's sometimes hard, but if Saturn is there, he's the one that gives the power to do the work. So the best work that you could be doing is not wasting your time with airy-fairy beliefs, and also beliefs in these airy-fairy solutions that come from politicians and the world and thinking all that's going to save you, or these immature beliefs, even like an immature belief in some kind of religion, but that doesn't have any kind of practice to it. That's just, well, I believe this, or all of our beliefs. Again, even believing in things that are just not true or not real, or who cares? Again, like believing in conspiracies about the world that we don't really know for sure. So why do we waste our energy on that stuff? We're just wasting our mental energy. Again, and this is a negative quality of Jupiter. Jupiter is our beliefs, and how we can just mistake our beliefs in something for actually doing it, for actually implementing it, and actually advancing with it. And again, I'm talking about this as well because at the very beginning, I also mentioned and talked about you can get this free web class that I have that really explains Jupiter in great detail. And this Jupiter in Capricorn, you can find out what it does for all signs, including your sign, because it's different if it's a Virgo person then Jupiter is the 4th and 7th house ruler in the 5th house. That's very different than if you're Taurus person and Jupiter is the 8th and 11th house ruler in the 9th. Right? So I go through and explain all of this and also give some background and historical context, including the last time Jupiter went through Capricorn, which was in March of 2020, end of March 2020 to the end of June. That showed the beginning of COVID, a lot of the results that we started to see when we saw nature rejuvenating itself, and we started to feel hopeful, even though it was hard. And then by the end of it, we started having all these protests and the George Floyd thing, and we saw our beliefs shift around a whole bunch of things. This is the last Jupiter in Capricorn with Saturn. So again, you should really understand this. I also talk about it in all of the nakshatras because it's going to be different. Again, in reference to COVID, also remedies and practices for this time. So again, you can get that. It's free. But again, where we're at right now with the shift in December and the next few months, again, the big stories have to do with that Jupiter, Saturn, and Capricorn moving us forward. Rahu is still in Taurus, Ketu in Scorpio. These are the larger structures that are there, that have been there, that'll be there for a while. Again, Mars had been in Pisces. He's been in Pisces. He winds up going back into Aries and shifting the day before Christmas. So for most of December, Mars is in Pisces. Then he goes into Aries. So again, that'll be a shift, but for the most part, there's a lot of potential, especially for enormous, devotion and growth. And, again, we also have those eclipses, especially that Scorpio eclipse on the 13th. And again, I talked about that a lot as well. That's a big wave. And if you can ride that, and if you practice on little waves, then by the time the big wave comes, it can really take you far. It can really take you deep, much deeper than you would have been able to go without the big wave. So again, we can just remain kind of sort of immature about these things and sort of complain and cry about why it's hard, or we can see that anything that's hard is also a great opportunity for someone with the muscles. The one who's got the muscles, they're going to build their muscles even more because they're used to doing things that are hard, and that's why we're here anyway. You didn't incarnate here so that you could just have a happy life. You incarnated here to learn the nature of self and who you are. So in these moments, in many ways, that's when it's totally revealed, is when you have to put it into practice. Like I say, to use the surfer metaphor, you never know how good a surfer is until he jumps on one of those big waves. Everybody can surf the little waves, but what about the bigger waves? So True Doll says, I'll be signing up for the Dushtana class coming up. I'm excited. Yeah, that's going to be great. I have a class coming up as well that's going to be helping people explain things like this. How do you explain difficult things astrologically? Again, it's not enough to just kind of put a Band-Aid on it or cheerlead someone about it or go, oh, well, just say your mantra, blah, blah. You need to be able to understand, especially difficult houses and other difficult things in astrology, and be able to understand them first for yourself so you actually understand why they happen so that you can grow up and be mature and not feel like a victim and not feel like when something bad happens, it's something bad happening to you. No, it's part of the program here. And it's mainly the part of the program that really makes you learn, actually. So I'm teaching a class on that. Mainly that revolves around Dushtana houses, the houses 6, 8, and 12, and how to interpret those from each ascendant. And Daryl said, thanks, Sam. Knowing we're about to grow is a lot more easeful way of stepping into transformation. So I appreciate you and your teachings. You're welcome, Daryl. Nice to see you. And yeah, always great when we have these planets in their own signs and those rulers that are there trying to give us the juice. So Ashkirk says, so informative. Thanks, Sam. You're welcome. And I see a lot of other good comments here. that we have that I appreciate. And we'll just leave it at that. I feel like I talked enough. I've also did a couple readings today, so I've done enough talking. So anyway, everyone have a good day, and everything's